What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor, and I started this YouTube channel to share my personal experience, strength, and hope. I've been in recovery and on my healing journey for almost 3 years now, if not longer than that. And I've made a lot of videos talking about my experience with, in particular, steps. And so this video is going to focus on my experience with step 1. I started off in Alcoholics Anonymous, and through healing and through learning about other 12-step programs, I realized that whatever I am dealing with, whether that be emotions, addictive to games, to shopping, to food, to people, relationships, whatever it is, if it's making my life unmanageable, then I am truly powerless over what is making my life unmanageable. So in Alcoholics Anonymous, step 1 says, we admitted we are powerless over alcohol. And then there's a second part to step 1, and I'm going to dive deeper into that after I share my experience with the first part of step 1, because I went my entire time in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous realizing that step 1 was even 2 parts. I thought it was just 1 part. And so the thing for me is, what I've realized with my recovery is that I'm powerless over my addiction, and that doesn't mean that I'm weak. And that's something that I had struggled with when I would come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I would hear the word powerlessness and my mind would automatically think of weak. I'm weak because I can't control my use. I would have family members, tell me I couldn't handle my liquor, and specifically tell me I was weak because I couldn't handle the way that I used alcohol. And so these things that I have been told throughout my life were in my head, which prevented me from being able to look at powerlessness through a different lens. And that is why it's important. My baby raccoons are coming in their mamas. And that is why it's important to get a sponsor when a person gets involved in 12-step programs, because there's no way I would have been able to do or figure all of this out on my own, and especially attending as many meetings as I could in the beginning of recovery, because I needed people to learn from, and I still need people today to learn from. And so I could not grow alone. And it took a lot of courage and a lot of surrender to realize that, my way isn't working. Let me try what these people are suggesting, and let's see if this can work for me. And so it was all about actually listening, taking notes, and the notes that I took and the suggestions that I took, and turning those suggestions into habits. So step 1 is admitting that I am powerless over my addiction, powerless over my emotions. I am powerless over people, places, and things that are out of my control. But what I am not powerless over is my reaction to these things, okay? I am not powerless over the fact that I have the ability to make a choice, And this came with being in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous with, I went through 1 sponsor. It ended very well. I got a second sponsor. And it's so interesting to me that, I would always ask people, like, what's your definition of powerlessness? Because I'm really struggling, like, grasping this thing, right? And people would tell me, and they would basically, it means you're not in control of it. It controls you. Well, I didn't like that so much, And there were times throughout my addiction where I thought I could control it, and there were specific times that I did a good job controlling it, but then I would lose all control. So like a normal person can have a drink and stop, but somebody like me, if I have a drink, it activates certain chemicals in my brain and I crave more. So I cannot just do something once or every now and then. I have to be abstinent. I cannot put anything in my body, because if I put anything, weed, I have to be careful about specific medications. Anything that's going to alter my mind, I have to be extremely careful. because it will activate a chain of events, like a chain reaction, and it can cause a lot of serious consequences for me. And so what I realize is that that's the first step. Truly getting to a place of admitting that I am powerless over my addiction, I am powerless over my emotions, but I am not powerless over my reactions to my emotions, and I am not powerless over the fact that I have the ability to make a choice. And for me in the beginning of recovery, it was hard to make good choices. It was hard to do the next right thing because my brain was not used to doing the next right thing. It was running on autopilot. My conditioning, my programming, my trauma, my dysfunction, my lack of inability to regulate my emotions or communicate my emotions to other people, my inability to be vulnerable, my inability to be open-minded, right? So like all of these things contributed to why I struggled so much of being able to admit I am powerless over addiction, and I am powerless over my emotions. And you know what? I am powerless over life, but I am not powerless over my reaction to life. I am not powerless over the choices that I can choose to make. And so that was a big eye-opener for me. And like I said, that came with time. That's not something I just did and read a little bit from the big book, went to a couple meetings, heard a couple people share, and then came to this realization. It took me almost over a decade to finally get to the point of true surrendering to what powerlessness really was and what it meant and what it looked like for me and how it was going to play a part in my recovery. And so there's two parts to step one. The first part I just said, we admitted we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. Now this second part, that our lives had become unmanageable. If I am doing anything in my life and it is causing my life to be unmanageable, then I have a problem. And it doesn't necessarily, for me, have to mean like addiction. Anything that I am doing that I know is affecting different areas, or if not all areas of my life, is the definition of unmanageability. And so I went so long in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, and like I knew that I was powerless over my addiction, right? I knew that. I knew the consequences had got so serious and so intense. Like I have lost everything because I chose addiction. I chose to stay in addiction for almost 15 years. And so that in itself showed me enough that I definitely cannot control my addiction. My addiction controls me. And the science behind addiction and what it does to the brain helped me really understand my brain better than as just reading the Alcoholics Anonymous book and leaving it at that. Like I needed more than Alcoholics Anonymous. I was willing to learn and research anything I could to help me understand why I had become the way I had become. Now, unmanageability to me was a completely different definition 3 years ago when I came into the program compared to where I am now. And I used to think, and I used to have this idea that if I wasn't using, everything would be okay. That addiction was the problem, okay? If I take away the addiction, if I go to college, if I'm a good mom, a good wife, like, then everything will be okay. It's the substances causing me to act this way, okay? And I found out very quickly, very fastly, very abruptly, that it was not just the addiction causing all of the other issues I had. I had all of these other issues that had been unaddressed my whole life. Like I mentioned, the trauma, the dysfunction, the lack of me being able to regulate my emotions, me not being able to self-soothe myself when I'm upset or angry. I really struggled with anger and rage my entire life. That was my coping mechanism. And so I realized that unmanageability doesn't just mean that I've lost my home because of addiction, I've lost my car, I've lost custody of my kids, I've lost materialistic things. To me today, unmanageability is me not being able to have the tools to cope with my emotions. Unmanageability is me not having a support system and reaching out when I'm struggling, or reaching out and maintaining commitments. Commitments are really important to me in my recovery. I will not miss commitments no matter what, because my whole life I missed everything. I was never on time. I was disorganized. Like, I would ghost people. Like, I just wouldn't show up for nothing. And so commitments are of value to me because it shows me that I am working my recovery. And so unmanageability can look like, to me, what type of relationships do I have with other people, but most importantly, what type of relationship do I have with myself? And when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, like, I hated myself. I resented myself. I did not know who I was. I did not know what I wanted out of life. I had no idea what the future held. I couldn't imagine, like, being sober the rest of my life. Like, I just had all of this fear and just all of this guilt, shame, and resentment just within myself. Like, I was not happy at all. I was suffering. I was suffering the most that I had ever suffered my entire life, because 15 years of unaddressed pain, that's a lot of things to deal with when a person gets sober. It's like everything that I held within myself just exploded out of the top, you know? And, you know, unmanageability looks like, you know, how am I treating other people? How am I talking to myself? Am I thinking before I'm reacting? Am I playing the tape through? Am I sacrificing my own emotional sobriety to be of service to other people? Or am I people pleasing? You know, like, what harm am I causing myself or other people? And like I said, it doesn't mean that I have to be intoxicated to cause harm, because trust me, I have caused a lot of harm to others and myself sober. So my point is that unmanageability looked completely different to me when I first came into the program. And this is my personal experience, and this is what has worked for me. You know, when I first came into recovery, I had to focus on rewiring my brain, developing new healthy habits, developing coping mechanisms, and like developing a support system, researching everything I could to learn about the impact that the trauma and the dysfunction and addiction had on me, and the outcome of how my mental health had declined. So it saved me this time. Many things saved me. I saved myself because I made the choice to come back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Just like I make the choice every day to maintain my daily recovery schedule, no matter how I feel physically, mentally, or emotionally. And I am not at peace 24/7. I do not have serenity 27. But do I have gratitude all the time? Yes, but I can have gratitude and feel sad for like 2 days in a row and still be grateful for what I have. And like, my point to this is that my connection that I found with myself and the power of life came much later on in recovery for me. Okay, and that's just how my recovery played out. And step 11 says prayer and meditation. And there's a separate video on that. And I emphasize on that because that word "and," that conjunction, is so important. It is more than important. It is vital to how a person's recovery is going to go, how a person's going to be able to deal with what life, you know, the things that happen in life, like handling situations that used to baffle us is a promise of all 12-step programs. So like, step 1 is basically a surrendering step. Like, I am truly surrendering that addiction controls me. I cannot control it. And my life is completely unmanageable. So how am I going to learn how to make my life manageable? Okay? And that's where the fellowship comes in. That's where the inner work comes in. The step work, meeting with sponsors. I like to, since I've been in recovery, I take my recovery very seriously because this is life or death for me. And I can't begin to fathom how many people I've met with, like, as a study buddy, where we just talk about whatever recovery stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be like Alcoholics Anonymous stuff. Like, we will work on whatever that can help us in any area of our lives. And so I'm a very open-minded person when it comes to healing, and when it comes to recovery, and when it comes to pulling as many resources and information and self-reflection questions that I can find. And, you know, that's the thing. The first 3 steps are surrender steps, saying, you know, I'm surrendering to the old version of myself. And this is my personal experience. A lot of people in 12-step programs surrender to a power greater than themselves. But for me, I surrendered to that part of my brain that told me I can't, I won't, and I never will be, okay? I surrendered to my diseased mind. I surrendered to my suffering self. It's kind of like I threw the flag up, like, I surrender. I'm tired of fighting against myself. It was constant war in my head my entire life. And I say this in a lot of my videos because this is an important part of recovery. And I feel it's important that people need to know that I didn't just come in the program and instantly I felt better. It took me months and months of taking action when my brain didn't want to take action. Repetition, building new habits, building new coping skills, building the support system, all these things. Like, I got to a point where I realized that I have the power within myself, and I already have the courage within myself, and I already have the wisdom within myself. But my entire life, I wasn't connected to my true self, okay? So the more I fed my positive mind with recovery, with healing, with learning life skills, with being of service, allowing good-hearted people in my life, you know, learning how to maintain and hold long-term relationships, learning how to forgive myself, learning how to talk to myself nicely. Like, all of these things contribute to why I'm able to sit here today and speak in this video and look at myself in the eyes while I speak in this video. And so step 1, and I tell people all the time, it's like, okay, you know, you got a sponsor. I have a sponsor that has a sponsor that has a sponsor. I have 2 sponsors, and both my sponsors, I have sponsors, you know. I recently just picked up new sponsees. I sponsor at the women's rehab once a week. And so, like, I am actively involved in service work, but I have found balance. And what I realized a while ago when I first started meditation is that, you know, I can do all the inner work. I can do all the self-reflection. I can identify the problem all day long. I can identify, oh, I reacted this way because of this. This comes from my childhood, right? This is a childhood reaction. This is an action of trauma. This is a reaction of dysfunction. This is a reaction that I have been taught from the people I grew up around. So, like, but what I realized is, you know, the true healing for me came in meditation, of processing my pain, of learning to accept my pain and accept the painful experiences, to accept the pain others have done to me, and like truly processing that. And meditation gave me a new lens to look through life at. So, you know, I also want to mention it can be detrimental also, like with self-reflection and step work and stuff like that. Like for me, and I went through this stage, sort of, I've worked with people that have really struggled with this, honestly, but they start self-reflecting, but they start ruminating instead of self-reflecting. So when I speak about self-reflection, I'm speaking about identifying and connecting with how I'm feeling inside and writing it on paper and like asking myself questions to really get to understand like what's going on within myself. And once I realize, okay, this is it, I always write solutions on like what action can I take to help me overcome this, or what can I do differently, like what type of action can I take to help me overcome this. And sometimes I have to take what I've done in self-reflection and I have to take it in meditation and I have to process it and I have to learn to accept it and I have to learn to let it go, you know. So step one is so important because it lays the foundation for all the other steps. And for me, like I said, I knew that I could not control my addiction. I knew I was powerless over my addiction. But for me to truly admit that my life was unmanageable took me 10 years later in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so that step lays the foundation for the following steps. And each step is in order for a reason. And I highly suggest to anyone who is planning on working the steps to be thoroughly honest. And if you have questions, or if you're struggling on a step, or you have 1 ounce of doubt that you're not ready to move steps, there's no rush. Like, this isn't a marathon. Like, we're not trying to rush through the steps. What the steps do, each step gives us a new foundation. Like, it gives us the ability to like build onto our foundation. Okay. And so I've been in recovery for 3 years. There are times I do 4 steps still, you know, like these things that I did early on in recovery, I still do today. I still use these tools. And so step one for me was all about surrendering that I cannot control my addiction. I cannot control my emotions. I definitely cannot control other people. The only thing I do have control over is my reaction to these things. And I have a choice. And my whole life, I felt that I didn't have a choice because my brain was on autopilot and I had made the same choices, unhealthy choices, my entire life. That's what my brain was used to. So change is very uncomfortable. And I want to show a few books that have helped me. And I highly suggest, if you're serious about change, if you're serious about recovery, you know, don't just stick with one fellowship. Open your mind. See, there's a whole world of resources out there. And that's why I created this channel, to share what's worked for me. And there's this book called Understanding the 12 Steps, a guide for counselors, therapists, and recovering people, by Terrence Gorski. I'm going to show the book, and it is backwards, so I'm going to have to type it out after I finish this video, and I definitely will. So I'm just going to show you what the books look like. Now, I found this book, and this is a really resourceful, informative, important book that I came across randomly at the library. Nothing, I don't believe in random. That's why I do quotation marks. But this is Trauma and the 12 Steps. So this is written by a doctor, and she talks about the 12 steps and trauma. And this book has really helped me, and it's really changed my perspective on a lot of things, which has given me the ability to help other people. Not just help myself, but also to be able to give other people this type of information. And there's like all types of resources in this book. And so this is a really important book because, you know, trauma is separate from the 12 steps, okay? And so I'll make another video about my experience with that, but I'm already at 24 minutes. And I wanted to share these 2 books because these are the books that I'm currently working in right now. There's this guy, and his name is Kevin Griffin. And he started off in 12-step programs, and he's older, and he is still involved in 12-step programs, but he noticed the correlation between Buddhism and the 12 steps. And so I've been working out of these books consistently every day, honestly. And his main book is titled One Breath at a Time. It's titled Buddhism and the 12 Steps. And I tell you what, if a person struggles with a higher power, this is the go-to book. This has helped me more than words can even explain. And it's helped me help other people. And he also has a spin-off of that book, which is a workbook, and it's Buddhism and the 12-Step Workbook. I'm currently about to start working with somebody with this book who is a chronic relapser who has already worked AA steps several times. So this breaks down exercises that are really important to do. And that's all I'm going to say is, like, this is really extensive, and I love the vocabulary because it can be for anybody, right? I do not have a belief system when it comes to religion, higher power. You know, I just believe in the power of life, and I'll leave it at that. But I will take any principles, practices, concepts, systematical things, whatever. I will take anything, and if I can apply it to my life and I can find it to be true and helpful, then I'm going to utilize it. And that's what being open-minded is about. And so also I wanted to suggest this book too. This is for women. It's a women's way through the 12 steps, and they also have a men's way through the 12 steps also. The way that Stephanie Covington breaks down these steps also gave me a different perspective on the steps. And so there's one more book I want to share. This is not 12-step stuff, but this is the Refuge Recovery book by Noah Levine, and it is a recovery program. And so this book helped me quit smoking. So all of these books that I read contribute to me being able to open my mind to a different perspective. It gives me knowledge. It gives me the ability to look at things through a different lens. And that is why I love reading, and I love learning all I can learn. And so that was my experience with step 1. And I hope that this video can be beneficial to somebody. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Drop it in the comment. I've got my email address. I've got my Discord app information on my main page. I've got resources available. I'm in the process of getting my YouTube channel organized. So I've got all these different types of recovery documents that that's helped a lot of other people that I just need to stop procrastinating, honestly. I only make videos when I feel it in my heart, and then when I feel it in my heart, I make a lot, and then I get burnt out, and so I take a break, focus on myself, and then I come back to making videos. So feel free to reach out, because this is why I created this channel, for free support.